I'm Dave. I'm sitting in the office here at Sacred Heart Primary in Timaru, and any mess you see, my apologies right there, but this is sort of just fitted into the day. So I think what you said, Greg's 100% right. We're just two people doing, a reasonably common job in New Zealand. There's lots of us, and I know not all of this group of principals or potentially even school leaders, but a lot of what we're doing at the moment sort of applies across any leadership thing. So very excited to be here, very happy to be here. We're getting used to this very structured Zoom right down to the minute. I've used 14 seconds now, and I'm going to suck it together. So Steve and I were fortunate enough to have a sabbatical at the same time about a year and a half ago, and we both had very similar topics. Mine was around principles and how some people are quite sustainable in the job, and some are not. And yours, Steve, was more...
I was really interested in those super principals who tend to go through stressful situations like we all do, but then bounce back really, really quickly. And I wanted to know what was it that they were doing that was different, that made them bounce back. Because, my experience with a lot of principals is that we just go through cycles and cycles and cycles of stress, and we just expected to we just take it all on our shoulders, really. And some principals just tend to have really broad shoulders, and why do they? And so that was what my sabbatical was about.
So,
but then we got a bit distracted, didn't we?
Yeah, we got a bit distracted. So we both thought we knew what we were doing. And to be honest with you, I was ready for a sabbatical. I felt like I needed to have a sort of a mental break from what I was doing. And I know Steve was similar. But since we knew each other anyway, and we caught up for each other's topics, we decided to collaborate. And some people have heard of us because we penned a short book. I've heard it's officially called a pamphlet if it's under about 2,000 words. So we put together this small thing, and the purpose for that was twofold. One was to give us a chance to put our thinking down clearly, which it really helped with. You agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree, because I think once you actually put it down in words, it sort of becomes real, doesn't it?
Yeah, it became something. But what we didn't realise is that if you create a piece of paper called a book and put your name on it, it gets people's attention. That was a real surprise to us. We didn't realise that was a thing. So on the back of that, we had a lot of people asking questions, etc. So we thought, well, we're only a sabbatical for a short time. How do we keep this conversation going? Because clearly it's a conversation that so many people want to have. So we started up a blog, The 40 Hour Principle, and it sort of snowballed from there, to be honest.
And for us, it's more of a project. We're not gurus. We don't know the answers. We've just got heaps and heaps of questions. And what we're trying to do is sustain our work and our lives so that we can actually do this for as long as we can. I've been a principal for 27 years or 26 years.
21 for me.
And it's actually, it takes its toll. And if I want to do this for much longer than, which I do, then, and I want to do it really, really well, then we actually have to learn to look after ourselves a lot better.
All right. So that's in a nutshell where we come from. We're just doing the job. We've done a principal's day up to now, and this is part of the job. So if you sit in that space as well, we can see Michael down there who cuts the odd YouTube video. G'day, Michael.
Yeah.
If you're in that space too, then we totally understand what your day looks like. So, Steve, you've got a...
Yeah, so we, this part that we're talking about is the be better slacker and be slacker better, which is kind of different, isn't it? Because you can be a better slacker, but a better slacker is someone who spends all the time on watching Netflix and sits on the couch and drinks beer and all that sort of stuff. And it's a little bit different to that, because although that is a good thing, we think being slacker better is actually even better, especially if you're going to be a professional. So Davo came up with the term, and we've sort of been mucking around with it. And when I talk to my staff about it, they think that I'm talking about being slack, and we're not talking about being slack at all. And it wasn't until a situation happened recently where I could sort of really come up with the definitive of what I mean. And so I use this as an example. I was out on duty, and I was doing your normal stuff as you do as a principal, sort of walking around the school. And suddenly I had a whole lot of 5-year-olds coming towards me, and they were screaming and shouting. And I thought, what's going on? Okay, what's little Johnny done now? And they took me over to over to the adventure playground, and there was one of my 5-year-olds. He just smacked his head into the jungle gym and split open his forehead. And I thought, oh my God, this is just terrible. So there's blood all over the place. So I picked him up in my arms and I thought, I've got to get him back to the sick bay. And he was obviously really, really upset, and there were lots of kids upset, and I just sort of wanted to take charge. And so I just took him back to the sick bay, and we started, you know, doing our first aid stuff back in the sick bay, which was good. Blood all over me as well, which isn't so good. But I really had this feeling that I just wanted to be with him because he was going through quite a lot of trauma, and that's what principals do. It's just the thing that we do. At the same time, I had a group of Year 6 boys and Year 8 boys who decided to have a soccer match. And this was about at 25 minutes past 1 when lunchtime was about to finish. One of the Year 6s decided to trip up one of the Year 8s. And one of those boys decided that wasn't actually a very cool thing to do. So this big fight started. Yeah. And so I had 2 Year 6 boys and 2 Year 8 boys who were sent basically to the office to get sorted out by Mr. Z, by me, the principal, all at the same time when I'm trying to do my first aid thing with this kid who's got this big, you know. And then the bell goes, and one of my ASD kids, who is always notoriously difficult to get back into classroom, especially after lunchtime, he'd done a runner and he sort of shot off down to the back paddock, and he didn't want to get in the classroom. And because I'm the one who has all the time on my hands as principal, I was the one who was expected to go find him. So I had, you know, this kid who was bleeding all over the place. I had these 4 kids who I was meant to sort out for the fight. And then I had, you know, Heath, who'd just gone for a runner. And I said, yep, I'm Superman. I'm the principal. I can do this. I'm going to actually sort this all out. And obviously, you guys go through that every day as well. We're expected to do all sorts of different things. And because we're the principal, we're the leader, we just, this is what we're meant to do, right? But in actual fact, I didn't do some things really well. I did the first aid thing pretty well. I think I sorted out the fight okay, but that night I got 2 phone calls from parents saying that I hadn't done that very well. And so they were going to write a letter of complaint, and I was going to have to go through that process. And I finally got Heath back, and that was sort of more like at 2 o'clock. But we do this all the time, don't we? And so I think what this shows that we actually need to be better to actually help us get through this.
Can I jump on that
Sure,
one, Steve, where you're in the flow? Just thinking, so the word slack, that offends some people because they say, you guys, you know, you're in your job, you're doing a really, really good job, and to associate the word slack with what you do actually rubs people the wrong way in the first instance often. And we've been quite surprised at how strongly people feel about that. Yeah. But when we use the word slacker or slack, what we're actually meaning in the first instance was pause.
Yeah, give yourself some time.
So we're not talking about being lazy. We're talking about having space and time and that capacity to reflect and make good decisions. Yeah. So what Steve's describing there is just a normal day at school with no slack in it. Yeah.
But you've got 2 problems here. You've got 2 different perspectives, and one of them is your inner perspective and an inner battle that you have with yourself about being slack. I mean, you're thinking, I'm in this situation, I'm the principal, I've got to sort this out. I get paid the big bucks. I need to do this, you know, and I want to do this. And then there's this external battle that's going on too, which is other people watching you and thinking this is actually your role. I mean, I had my DP running around and she was saying, Steve's got this, it's all okay. And she was right. I felt as though I did have it, sort of. And so people feel that, you know, you've got to actually step up and do this. And, you know, there's that sort of judgment element. So there's an inner battle that you're going through with yourself, and then there's this external battle as well. And I think we really need to just take time to actually, first of all, get the internal one sorted and get sorted in our head and go, it's actually okay to be a little bit slack in your own mind. And really, the only thing I really needed to sort out myself that day was that little kid in the sick bay, because he was bleeding all over the place. Okay, and that was actually the big thing that I needed to do. My DP could have sorted out those boys, and probably Heath, he was sort of running around the field. He
was okay.
He was actually okay, you know, but I sort of felt I had to do all of it all at once. So I think we really need to sort of prioritise, you know, where our energies are best met, and we've got to actually have that up here first, and that's where the inner battle is, I guess. And then once you've got that in mind, then you've got the external battle about taking the perspectives to your staff and saying, well, actual fact, I can't do everything and I can't be spread thin. What are you guys going to do to help us? And that's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's our beautiful time. Yeah.
So that's about it. So the provocation, I guess, is really how can you be slacker better in your school?
And keeping in mind that slackness is all around having space.
Yeah.
Mental space, maybe physical space as well, but stopping yourself getting into that windmill cycle that Steve's just described. Now, I don't think it's probably just school principals that hit that one up. The teachers certainly do it. Plenty of other people in the world do it. But to not have some slackness built into how you respond and what you do could potentially have some challenges.
Yeah. And I think, you know, you doing this daily or, you know, every second day, it's easy to burn out, isn't it? It's easy to get a lot of stress on.
We will chuck a wee bit of strategy in here. So we're trying to tie these two ideas together. Steve's talked about this idea of creating slack, mental slack as much as anything, so that you've got a bit of a basis for how you make decisions and how you roll when the pressure comes on. But something we'd also like to touch on is this concept of being busy, and it sort of relates to the same thing. So we believe, having thought about this quite a bit, that the whole idea of busy has been somewhat misunderstood and maybe even hijacked in society. So I'll give you an analogy. If any of us roll through the supermarket on the way home after this session, we're very likely to buy beer. Yes, first, before we can drink the beer.
Yeah.
We're very likely to be asked the question by the checkout person to say, how's your day been? Because they're trained to do that. And if you were listening to the people in the queue, almost all of them will reply some version of, oh, really busy. Yeah, it's been busy. I'm busy. And that's there. Now, why would you tell a complete stranger that you're busy, except for the fact that there is somehow a sort of assumed status in being busy? There's no reason to do that otherwise. It's something that people are willing every time they come to the supermarket to share with somebody they don't know. And I think we as leaders are very guilty of that as well. And that whole busyness thing, you could really reframe that. And that's one of our little pet projects at the moment. You know, if somebody says to you, how's your day been? You could just as easily say, look, really productive. Really got some stuff done today.
Yeah, you could say, I've been really efficient. I got to go home at 3:30.
Yeah.
Instead of, I'm so busy.
I'm heading home early because I really nailed it today, you know?
Yeah.
And so the conversation becomes around busy. And what happens then is that the busyness can stop you doing the important work. I know Greg talks about the urgent and the important. Busyness sort of implies that things are happening fast, that they're coming from all directions, that there's no space, no slack, and no pause. We don't think that's a good thing because it robs you of that thinking space. It takes you away from being present. Now, if you're leaders of people, pretty much the most important thing you'll ever do is be present for them.
Yep.
You'd agree?
I agree. Totally.
And that's
got to be there.
And in the end, being busy all the time, it decreases your wellness. And we're going to link quickly to that in the second part of this. So one tactic that you can use that works really well, and we're both experimenting with, and I reckon I've got my version of it now, not too badly, is a thing called batching. It's not our idea. Like we're sharing other smart people's ideas really in many cases, but we're applying it to the education leader setting. So batching is a term used by many people. There's other names for it as well. But what it actually means is that you block out bits of time to do the important work. Now, depending on what your job looks like, that could be easy or hard. In the job I do, it takes some deliberate action to make it work. I'm somebody that likes to be accessible. I like being involved in the school. I know Steve's the same.
Yeah.
It goes against the grain not to be available. But in essence, what batching does is you systematically create a piece of space so that you can do the important stuff. So a quick little bit of tactical talk about this, we could go on about this for ages for me, is that I set my team up to support me to do it. So the admin team, teachers, kids even at school, they have an understanding of when I'm going to be batching and what that means. And really it means, unless there's nuclear war breaking out, just leave me to it. And by creating that space, most days I achieve it, not every day. I'd like to say every day, but most days I do. That little bit of space has been an absolute game changer for me. It's allowed me to get through the important work, which I believe is always to do with people, and not to get to the end of a full-on day and not have done anything important. So I'm taking myself out of the urgent, if you like, for a while and deliberately focusing on the important stuff. So there's one wee tactic that's super successful. We've blogged about it, haven't we?
Yeah, we have
stuff in the book.
So Dave, you actually physically close your door.
Yeah.
You know, we've meant to be, we've always got this policy of he's an open door principle and he's always accessible. Well, that's actually fabulous. But at some stage you actually do have to close the door and say, I'm actually going to be out for an hour in my office and I'm not accessible. And then you can do the stuff that you need to do.
Exactly. So there's a tactic.
Seems really simple, doesn't it? Why don't we do that?
It wasn't hard. It wasn't actually easy to do. It took some structure. It took deliberate structure. I think if it's just a good idea, if you just think, oh, I'm going to batch, it isn't going to work at all. You need to work your way through it. Happy to have that conversation out of this setting, but just time-wise, I want to just take a slight difference of tact, but it links to what we've been saying before. So no slack creates a pressure, and it also creates ineffectiveness.
Yeah.
No, being too busy does exactly the same thing. External things coming in, stopping you from doing your job. The provocation question, I'm just going to leave you out of this one, is around the word professional. And we asked this question with the Canterbury group we worked with on Monday, and we said to them, what would you say is professional? And they came up with a whole lot of words. I've written some of them down. They said it's having integrity, it's being organized, it's committed, you're knowledgeable, trusted. They came up with a whole heap of words around this concept of being professional, but they left out what we think is one critical component. Crucial. So I don't want to throw that in. Maybe we can add it just afterwards because I'm not trying to give you a cliffhanger. But if you're doing the job you're doing at the moment, you're probably in a profession. And somewhere in your history, you made a mental picture up about how that job looked. And that's something that it could have been constructed in any way, but you made the picture you've got through experiences and your personality and all the rest of it, and you label it professional, as do most people doing the type of jobs that we're doing at the moment. And I just wonder what people actually think that means. And I'm coming to it from the context of being not having enough slack and perhaps being too busy on a daily basis. Where does professionalism sit in with that? That's my sort of question, which I think is worth debating a wee bit, because one of the things that we often say, certainly when you're doing contract negotiations with the government, you're saying, well, this is a profession. You know, we need to get treated like professionals. But I'm looking at it slightly differently and saying, well, if you're inside this work and you're doing it professionally,
what does that look like? How
does that look like? And of course, the direction we're going is to think about the slack and the busy. What would a professional person in your job actually do? And just before I finish on that, the reason for putting it in those terms is, like writing a book makes people somehow take notice. I don't know. That's magic. I don't know how that works. It's fairy dust stuff, right? Because it's very easy to write a book in this day and age. It's not a difficult thing to do.
I thought it was hard.
Was it hard? It was pretty easy. When you've got people who are struggling with making change in their leadership role that we run into, one way to access that is to have this debate about what's professional. And because people always buy into the professional thing, they don't fight it. That's something that they understand. Everyone intrinsically says, yes, I'm an educational leader, I'm a professional. So I'm saying, from the context of what we've talked about at the moment, the provocation would be, what do you consider to be professional in your daily job? Okay, just two wee quick things. I'll read you the two definitions of professional that came from, right? So when that provocation came from. So the Cambridge Dictionary says that professional is having the qualities that you connect with trained and skilled people, such as effectiveness, skill, organisation, and seriousness of manner.
Seriousness of manner. You have to be
Very
serious
important.
to be a professional.
That's the Cambridge Dictionary definition. But the 40-hour project definition is professional is working in a manner that is both effective and sustainable.
Sustainable. And a bit silly.
That may be a bit silly. So that's where we came from that. The other thought just on top at the moment is in our breakout, we were talking about batching because obviously people are interested, and we can see Stephen's put a link into the chat there. Thank you for that. Could talk about that for about 1 minute if you want, but I mean, I know we're out of time. Okay.
Yeah. There's a question here though. Why do we, Carolyn, why do we have such a strong need to look busy? I think it's a real cultural thing, and I think it's just got out of hand. You have to say, I'm busy. You can't say, actual fact, I've had a great day. You know, it's even at the supermarket when someone says to you, when a checkout woman, checkout person says something along the lines of, it might be on a Sunday and saying, oh, you're going to have a busy day. And I always feel guilty if I say, no, I'm actually going to just go home and sit on the couch, even though it's a Sunday. We say, oh yeah, my day's going to be busy, definitely. And we just, why do we do that? It's crazy. But we also have to look busy as well. Rush through, look busy.
That's a good point, Michael. Yeah, that's a good one, Michael. That's a good way of framing it, eh? Just to start the conversation off in a different line. I agree with that too. It sort of just shifts it straight from start. Well done. In a very quick burst, guys, batching is taking that time, making time. It's a deliberate action, and you can read the blog post and there's all sorts of stuff. But the wee steps that you need to do would be to pick a time that works. If you are sole charge and you're in class all day, you can't pick a time when you're in front of the kids. But you pick a time that works best inside of your normal day. So that's critical for a starter. And diary it, because if it's not on your diary, it's not real. And then you're going to have to find a way of removing yourself. So that could be shutting the door, which we've talked about has been counterintuitive for many of us, but it could perhaps be moving to a different place, space, or, you know, geographical position. So you might, to get this type of work done, have to shift yourself. It could be home, it could be in a different office, it could be wherever. You have to have that place. So you pick a time, diary it, remove yourself from access to people. And then I think the overlooked but critical key to making this work for people such as us is to get your key staff, your team on side with what you're trying to achieve. And personally, I've found my guys to be super supportive. They look after me like a baby when they know I'm batching. Yeah. It's awesome.
And then that sort of gets rid of some of those external perceptions where people start making up things that you're doing or that you're not doing or that you should be doing.
Because you've got to sell that idea of being in the important space, working on the important stuff. And once you sell that, I think, to the key people, the gatekeepers, if you like, then you're on a bit of a winner. And it's been an absolute game changer for me.